Welcome to Teachers Talking Teaching, where we celebrate and elevate the art of teaching.
We're back this week with Carla Hewitt on Teachers Talking Teaching, where she is going to share with us about what it's like to be an interventionist and a literacy specialist at her elementary school. Welcome back, Carla.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we are curious about what you are passionate about with kids, and like, what do you want everybody out there to know about what's important about teaching, especially those little ones that are struggling with literacy, struggling with learning to read. So can you share with us some of your best tips and tricks?
Okay. I think the most important thing for early literacy is to have some data, to do some benchmark data, some diagnostic assessments, figure out exactly where the needs are. Especially for young students with literacy, you've got to start with that phonological awareness, because that is the foundation, and everything with literacy builds from there. Now, too, I'm so excited that we're not just the 5 components, but we're the 5 components plus oral language, because I think that is a piece that has been left out for numerous years, and it plays such a big part with early kiddos being able to read and be successful as readers and writers. So that if anyone ever asks, that's exactly my go-to. What do we know? What do we know right now? What is our baseline?
Yeah.
And those are the assessments that an oral language assessment and a phonological awareness assessment definitely will give us where our baseline is.
Is there an assessment tool that you feel like gives you as a teacher? I mean, like, we gather lots of data, but is there a particularly one that you're like, that one is one of the most meaningful for me?
I think for that phonological awareness, the past, it's been around forever, and I feel like it is still it is a quick baseline assessment of where the student lies. And now the Kilpatrick Past, the K-Past as we call it in our district, is a valid tool as well. More valid, I think, for first and second graders than an early incoming kindergartner for phonological awareness. But I think it's been a while. It's been out there for a while, but it's still the best assessment that's out there. So
Well, yeah, and I feel like it gives you the data then to structure. So can you talk about like that next step? Like, you've gathered the data.
Right.
How do you decide where to take it from there? Because I know that data is so specific.
Right.
So figuring out what to then do with it and structure your time with kids, and the little bit of time you especially get with them, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So especially, kindergartners with that, looking at that attention span and how often their day changes, it is a short amount of time. So I've made sure for years that we make sure we do a warm-up time with some phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, wherever they are on that scale, and then move into whatever we've discovered from our data, what they need next as far as phonics instruction, at moving past that phonological awareness, teaching both of them coherently together, and making sure that you're meeting all the needs that way.
Yeah.
When you talk about the coherence, one of the things you talked about in your previous interview was the collaboration with the classroom teachers. So how do you build some of that coherence between, the lessons and the skill instruction that you're doing in intervention, and then what that then looks like with the classroom teacher and their role in either, carrying on that intervention, supporting it, building on it? Can you just talk a little bit about what that looks like?
I think that's been the most exciting piece for the last 3, even 4 years, even before science of reading became the big term that everyone talked about. We have worked really hard in our building to start being a very structured literacy instruction, and use structured literacy. And I feel like I see such a growth now with the kiddos where we are more cohesive on what's happening in the classroom as far as explicit systematic instruction. That was the same instruction I'd been doing in intervention for years, but they weren't also getting that piece in the classroom as well. So I think now that all the teachers are doing the classes, coming on board with the importance of that structured literacy and making sure the 5 components are met every day, I feel like we really do have that coherence. And when we sit down to collaborate, we talk about where you are in the classroom, because we want those kids to make sure they've got grade level standards being met. What skills am I backfilling? But I'm also touching on the skills that they are working on in the classroom, again, for them to have another hit, because students that are struggling often need, an average learner can hear it 4 or 5 times. A struggling student might need to hear it 45 times, right? So I think we're making great gains because of that collaboration time spent and talking about what they're doing in the classroom, sharing what I'm doing so that we are so cohesive.
Yeah, I think that one of the challenges we face as elementary teachers is sometimes with those struggling kids, we disjoint their day so much that they aren't able to connect what's going on in the classroom with what's going on
Have a
with
coherent
you.
experience of
Exactly.
this is how it all comes together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I feel strongly about, yes, I'm going to backfill where their needs are off of their diagnostic assessment, but at the same time, yes, we're still going to work on whatever. This week we worked on the CK rule with first grade because that's what they're doing in the classroom, and they needed to hear that again as well. And can I find a way to make that accessible for them through intervention, but also continue to backfill where their needs were as well. So
I think one of the reasons I've hesitated to do a job like yours is because I've always wondered, how in the world do you build relationships with kids when you see them for such a tiny bit of their day? Can you talk about how you're able to do that with the kids? Because I think I have a feeling it's equally important in what you do as to being the regular classroom teacher as well. So,
well, and I've always shaved out like 2 or 3 minutes at the beginning of my groups to do some sort of activity. With first grade, for years, I've done riddles. They love those. I greet them at the door and, make sure I make a personal, quick eye contact with each one as they're coming in. I'm glad you're here today. I have game day on Friday where we're doing phonics or phonological awareness games, but it's game day. At our building, we use PBIS, and so I use Bob Bucks. They know the minute they walk in the door, the Bob Buck is theirs for being there if they're able to follow all of our respect, responsibility rules that we have throughout the building. They love collecting those, and I have tubs over the years that I have. Anytime we have any scholastic money, I beg my principal for it. So I have tubs of books so they can get a book, and I try to make it fun. They're struggling, right? So I try to build some fun in there as well as getting the skills in there. And I feel like I'm pretty good at building those relationships with the kids. And even though they have to leave their classroom, they're excited to come and spend a few minutes working on those
and you've hit
skills.
on some things, and if there's anything else you have to add, because I feel like another piece of it is building their confidence, because a lot of times with those kids especially, that's part of their biggest struggle is they don't have any confidence in their ability as a reader, as a writer, as a student, even in general sometimes. So are there any other special things you do to try to build them up? You've mentioned a few already, but
I spend a lot of time. I try to rotate around and listen to everybody every day and give really specific feedback about, wow, I noticed you self-corrected today, or wow, we've been working all week on long A and you got it in all these 3 words, and just really try to build them up that way with specifics on how they have improved and where their skills have grown. And I feel like that hopefully gives them some additional confidence. And we talk a lot about when you get back to your room now, you're going to be so strong on this, you're going to be able to do it with what you're working on the rest of the day. So
awesome. When you think about the vast amount of resources that are directed toward struggling readers and companies and programs and people who say that they've got the silver bullet to addressing a reading difficulty, what do you think is the right strategy or the right approach that does involve some research-based materials? Is there something that you found is like, yep, this is my go-to, I see a lot of success with this?
Yeah, I feel so like purchasable program that I have had a lot of success with the last 3 or 4 years. Well, I guess we bought it about 4 years ago. It's 95% group for those struggling readers, because there are so many modalities at play. It's very structured. They can color wise, right? Each of the vowels, consonants have different colors. It gives them a chance to encode and decode while they're working with it. So I feel like it has made it's a program that I've tried some of them and been like, no, I don't think so. But I feel like it has made a good, given us some good data. And so I still use it frequently. I for years have used magnetic letters and moving letters around, or letter tiles, because actually manipulating the letters to build words is a huge proven strategy, and it's not something that you have to go out and spend a lot of money on. I've used blending lines for years and years, and I retype blending lines every year to get their names within the, so we do words and then we do sentences, and every year I retype them to put their names in the sentences to bring their buy-in as well. So I work from that word level to phrase level, sentence level, to then into passage level. So, a lot of those things I've used, the magnetic letters and the blending lines and word lists that I've typed up over the years, aren't necessarily, when teachers ask me when we present in the summer, aren't really necessarily things you have to go out and spend a lot of money on. It's more time, right? Like you need to develop, and even though I've got those things developed, I change them every year on the needs of what the students are.
As a trainer of the LETRS program, you mentioned that in your origin story last week. Can you talk more about like what made you so passionate about that after you did your initial training, that you were like, this is it?
Yeah. I think at that point, I think a lot of other teachers were out there struggling like I was. We weren't prepared in our teacher education program. We didn't know the science behind learning to read, which is a big portion of the LETRS. Then there's a section on phonics, and I realized as soon as I took the program, I was like, I was a whole language baby. I was a terrible speller until I took LETRS when I was, I was a young mom myself already in the early 90s, right? So I was like, now I know how to spell, and then moving through, making sure you're hitting all the components then with a fluency section, vocabulary. That was why I was so passionate about the program. There were a lot of other teachers that I talked to who were like, yes, I don't have this knowledge under my belt to be a reading teacher either. So, yeah.
Who knew my mom's purchase of the magnetic letters on the fridge?
Was
so important.
Right?
I remember I used to love moving the letters around.
Yeah, manipulating.
Yeah, that whole total physical, interaction with words and letters and sounds. And rhyming books. I mean, a parent buying their child rhyming books, and the nursery rhymes that were very much part of my generation growing up. Is there anything that you see in your role in collaborating with parents? Are you kind of teaching parents too as part of this?
Yes, we've done it. We've done a few parent nights for early literacy nights, but it's interesting as I attend conferences in a couple weeks, and being invited to conferences by classroom teachers, and just parents nowadays, what you just talked about, rhyming books, we're not reading, we're not babbling to our kids as we're driving. They're looking at a little screen behind their parents' head in the car. And parents, it's amazing when parents are like, oh, they're not thinking, maybe they're not remembering that was maybe part of what led to their being able to read. Yeah. But I spend a lot of time sharing ideas, typing up ideas for rhyme, or look around when you're driving. It's McDonald's. What's the first sound you hear in McDonald's, right? What's the first letter? So I do spend some parent education time as well in my role, definitely.
Yeah, and particularly when you think about your role as your child's first teacher, and having somebody else to have given you that advice when you're a parent of like, oh, what I wish I would have known when my kid was starting kindergarten.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Carla, we really appreciate you sharing your insight this week, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate your genius and all the things that you're doing to help readers grow into the love of reading.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you liked what you heard today, go to our Facebook page and like and subscribe. You can also go to YouTube and join our YouTube channel, as well as listen to us on your favorite podcasting app.